I think it's really good to find photos that really you can see yourself in,
100%.
inspiration photos, and then kind of pick apart what style that is. Is that really like somebody standing there posing you, making sure that you look absolutely fabulous?
Or
is
are they
that
just dancing and spinning?
is that somebody telling you like, okay, whisper something dirty in her ear and get her to laugh? Like, those are very different photographers. I always try to do a mixture of both. And also I have questionnaires that I'm sending my clients before the engagement session even. So I haven't even physically seen them yet at this point. But I'm asking them, like, what kind of couple are you? Are you really adventurous and outgoing and extroverted? Or are you more like quiet and you want to spend the night together indoors and watching TV together? Because that tells a lot about your personalities and how you're going to pose. If he doesn't normally take you out and lift you up and spin you and throw you in the air,
it's going to really want that for your pictures.
Yeah, and it's going to feel and look awkward if he does because he's never done that before. Hi, I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Kaylee, and this is
Shoot the Vows. And today we're going to be talking about why it's important for your photographer and videographer to feel like friends to you. And Kaylee?
Hi.
I think it's so important. I think it's important to be comfortable when you're getting your photos and videos taken.
So something that you've probably heard since we've talked about it in almost every episode we've posted was about just vibing with the people and just like jiving and just making sure that you're around vendors and people that you trust and that you actually connect with. Because if your makeup artist is a Debbie Downer and you're with them for 4 hours of your morning, talking about small party, but like that is just going to set the mood for the whole day. Or if we flip it on the other end, okay, I know we're two very bubbly personalities. And if you are more quiet, softer, and reserved, and you don't like that energy and don't like that kind of vibe, then why would you hire us? Because that's going to be the vibe we bring. Yes, we bring a very calm, collected energy to us, but we kind of like to be, the party and the fun and, make sure that we're driving well.
Yeah.
And again, I think as we've talked about with any of the professions and vendors we've talked about, it's so important to make sure you're driving with your person, especially your photographer who's following you around like a lost puppy.
Yeah. And videographer. They're kind of one and the same.
100%. I usually just take one as both.
Yeah. I've talked to a couple brides recently where they said that they didn't feel comfortable. They felt very awkward. Not just awkward, insecure awkward, but awkward because they didn't really like the person taking their photos. They didn't know them that well. And every time they look at their photos, they can see that.
Like, and you can not just see the tension, but you can feel it too. And you can think back to that day of like, oh, wow, that was, whereas if you have somebody that, like, I know for us in our business that we do, it's very important for us for engagements before the wedding day. Yeah. It's so important because they get a feel of us. We get a feel for them. We know what their insecurities are. We know what to watch out for them.
Yeah.
And so come the day of the wedding, it's like we're their best friends walking in. And they're like, oh, I missed you guys. It's been a couple months. How you been? Let's catch up,
Yeah, never skip your engagement session.
Never.
If it's offered, and even if it's not, maybe it's a good idea to pay for it. And I've had a couple of clients say we don't need engagement photos, or we already took engagement photos.
If it's not offered, that's a red flag. Yeah. Like if your photographer and videographer is less with the videographer side of things, because there's just a lot more that goes into that side.
Yeah.
But especially with photos, like if they're not offering that engagement session, that's kind of a red flag to me because that is the prime time for you to know how they work.
Yeah.
Like, and getting those photos back, if you don't like them, you don't want them at your wedding.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, if you have to pay extra for an additional session, then absolutely meet up with them.
Even if you don't necessarily need the engagement photos because you've already got them done, do a mini session with them.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that this is somebody you want with you all day long.
Yeah. And it's also not even just their personality. Their personality is a big part of it, but it's also their posing and their style of posing. Some photographers won't even pose you at all. And I don't relate. I don't know how they get good images because they must have just models for clients. But I could never imagine just pointing a camera at somebody and saying, "Look natural." Look good.
Because as the model who's been on the model side of things 4 years ago, like, it's a little intimidating because what do you mean I have to act natural? What is natural to you? Because it might not be natural to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I love the more candid poses. I love the more candid pictures where they're more fluent and you can see the motion. But not every photographer is going to be able to capture that.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a photographer who's a studio photographer, they're going to know how to, that's going to be the opposite of what you said. They're going to know how to pose you and they're going to want you posed.
Yeah.
Whereas that might not be what you want on your wedding day. That's not what I would want on my wedding day.
I think it's really good to find photos that really you can see yourself in,
100%.
inspiration photos, and then kind of pick apart what style that is. Is that really like somebody standing there posing you, making sure that you look absolutely fabulous?
Or
is
are
that
they just dancing and spinning?
is that somebody telling you like, okay, whisper something dirty in her ear and get her to laugh? Like, those are very different photographers. I always try to do a mixture of both. And also I have questionnaires that I'm sending my clients before the engagement session even. So I haven't even physically seen them yet at this point. But I'm asking them, like, what kind of couple are you? Are you really adventurous and outgoing and extroverted? Or are you more like quiet and you want to spend the night together indoors and watching TV together? Because that tells a lot about your personalities and how you're going to pose. If he doesn't normally take you out and lift you up and spin you and throw you in the air,
it's going to really want that for your pictures.
Yeah,
you know?
And it's going to feel and look awkward if he does because he's never done that before.
And you're going to be able to see that awkwardness. And like, again, that's not what we're trying to accomplish here. Especially with us and our style of photography. Yes, we want that Christmas card posed photo. We always take 4 out of the whole bunch.
You gotta
know what I mean?
Some where you're looking at the camera.
Right. But for a good chunk of what we do, we have those more movement and fluid, candid moments. And that's, I think, because you work with me as the videographer who can't have them just standing there.
Yeah.
You know, I can't have a couple just say cheese. Like,
your video.
It just doesn't work. Like, I need the movement and the flow. And I think that's where you help me and I help you.
Yeah. Yeah. So also having a team, you want to know if they work well together. If you do photo and video with us, then you're getting photo and video for your engagement session because you can also put that video into your wedding. Yeah, into your wedding video. But also, we want to feel when you get in front of the camera on your wedding day and you feel confident, that is so powerful because not only do you look amazing, now you feel amazing, you feel confident, and your session, your little mini, the small part of the day where you're in front of the camera and you're just doing posed photos, that is going to feel so much better. And so you just want to be comfortable.
Because you feel 100%.
Yeah.
So as a photographer who's been in the industry longer than I have been, how do you know that boundary between that friend's photographer and when they've kind of overstepped and they're too relaxed to be?
Yeah. Well, it's something that I've had to stop and consider, even for the podcast. Like, how it's difficult to be professional but have a personality, at least with my type of personality. Because my type of personality can sometimes be a little inappropriate or a little,
vulgar.
Crazy or vulgar or just like boisterous. So I want to make sure that
dark.
I'm being.
You've got very dark humor.
I want to make sure I'm being professional, but I also don't want to walk around like I have a stick up my butt.
Right.
And I want to
especially on someone's wedding day.
Yeah, you want to be approachable.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important, and I think it's also important for the client to be a client. I mean, I've become friends with my clients and we've done stuff after their wedding and things like that. But I think it's important to maintain a professional working relationship with any vendor that you have. A big thing is having a professional there on your wedding day versus a friend holding the camera, because a professional is not going to be afraid to make executive decisions, or they're not going to take up a lot of time joking around, or they're paid to be there.
Right.
So it's a little bit different. I remember I actually photographed my dad's wedding, and it was an interesting experience because I knew 95% of the people. Yeah, 95%
everybody,
of the people there.
but you know, his best friend,
Yeah,
Uncle Joe, that is out of town.
yeah. So it was a little different, but it was a different vibe. It was different. The way that I communicated with my family, who I was taking photos of, they actually were a little less likely to listen to me because, you know, my aunt has been telling me what to do my whole
Your
life.
whole life, and now she's trying to take orders from you. Really?
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I haven't had many clients that have really like went over the boundary kind of. I guess my biggest thing is don't text your vendors at midnight. Like things like that. Like it's a little rude, like it's a little too friendly. Not to say don't text me, but you just kind of have to know like when and
Just
where.
be a little bit more mindful. Like, yes, we don't have a set like 9 to 5. No, but probably don't text us before 8 a.m. and after 8 p.m.
Yeah. And not to say I've never answered a text at 10 p.m.
And we'll answer our texts and our emails, but like that's not what we really want to be doing at those hours.
Yeah, so it's important to just kind of vibe check. I'm too old to be using that term. I don't know why I'm using that term, but it's important to get a feel for their personality and
make
how
sure
they're gonna
you
work.
jive with them. Like that is my biggest advice to all of anybody who's getting married. Make sure you're jiving with the people you are hiring.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have a good feeling about them when you meet them, it's probably your sign not to hire them.
Yeah.
Like not to say that maybe they just were having a bad day, because it happens, but that's not the point. Like,
yeah, and also looking at reviews, because reviews are going to tell you, well, you know, they just angrily stood in the corner for 3 hours during the reception or something like that.
Which, and like, I know for me, like, I don't give reviews unless it's really bad or really good. And like, that's really bad and I shouldn't do that. But like, that's what it is. Like, these people are putting their reviews. Wow, they did an outstanding job and they loved everything, every moment. That's typically not bait. That is just them talking about their experience. Because again, I don't leave a bad review unless it was absolutely awful and you should never go there ever. Like, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it really, the reviews, that's so important. The energy and the vibe and just making sure that it's somebody that you jive with and connect with. And I feel like something else that's really important is, yes, your budget is important, but somebody who's lowballing themselves is really dangerous.
Yeah.
Because if you got a photographer who's saying, I can do your whole wedding for $400, maybe you don't want to go with them, because maybe you're not going to get the best quality. Just because you own a camera doesn't mean you know how to take pictures.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and that's another really distinguishing thing, where if you're comparing 3 photographers that are all the same price, because price isn't the only way to shop, right? But they're all the same price. It's a big factor
with most people.
Yeah.
Rightfully so.
But if, you know, your budget is $3,000 or $4,000, there's a lot of photographers in that price range. Mm-hmm. And I think that personality is one of the biggest determining factors. So getting on the phone with people and getting on, you know, Zoom meetings and things like that can really help you determine how they work.
Is bad, and I keep talking about red flags, but it's a big red flag to me if your photographer and videographer don't want to meet you before your day.
Yeah.
Like, that is a huge red flag.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't want to meet the person you're about to spend 12 hours of the day with, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm the same way. A client is a red flag to me if I can't get them on the phone. If they're like, I'll only communicate via email or text.
Oh, that's also anxiety and social anxiety. So, like, I understand it. I do, as somebody who has got a little bit of that social anxiety.
As you're in front of a camera on a podcast.
Well, once I'm there and happening, it's like, well. But I understand why, as a business professional, like, you want somebody who's going to have steady communication. And I know that we've talked about it before. Communication is key. Communication is so important.
Yeah.
Because if your photographer is not answering you 30 days before, that's a problem, because they're probably going to have a lack of communication after the fact, getting your pictures back.
Yeah. So if you're a couple that's really camera shy, or you feel like you're awkward in photos, I really recommend getting a photographer that's going to do some more candid, or I guess getting someone that's going to do some candid or some pose and asking them, how do you work? And figuring out, do I want like really posed photos where, we're kissing, or my arm is like kind of in this position? Because they'll put you in that position and you don't have to worry about looking bad, because you're going to look exactly how they tell you to move and look.
Right.
Same with candid, but sometimes people know they've had their photos taken before and they say, well, none of my walking photos looked good or natural. And sometimes people have a different stride, and especially for video, you're going to be able to see all of that.
it.
So maybe you do want to go with someone more posed. But asking these photographers, what is your process? I think that's the least asked question that I get. And I think people look at the style as far as color and things like that, but they're not looking at the style as far as the posing.
Poses.
And that's so important, because that's your whole experience in front of the camera.
And I feel like it goes both ways. You either have the couple that is only looking at the inspiration for the colors and the editing, and then you have other couples who are only choosing the inspiration for the poses. And it's really important to figure out, what do you like about this picture? Do you like the pose, or do you like the color?
Yeah.
Or do you like both? You know what I mean?
I've shown up to engagement sessions where they've sent me like 20 inspiration photos and they don't look anything like my work. And I'm like really confused. And they're like, oh yeah, we just really like these poses. And I'm like, okay.
Thank goodness.
Because I do not edit like that. That is not my style at all. So just making sure. But another thing you can do is, a lot of people will hire their wedding photographer and they'll have the engagement session done, after they book for the wedding. But you can also find an engagement photographer that also does weddings and book them and just do your engagement session first, and then say, oh, you know what? I want to book my wedding with you.
And I know we've had a couple that they've came to us and they were from out of town and they just wanted us for engagements, and we were more than happy to just do it. And, right there at the end, I was like, hey, if y'all ever get married, we'd love to do it. Y'all are great. Because we tend to get those couples that are just flawlessly natural in front of the camera, where they just know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do get those couples that need a little bit more guidance. Yes, exactly.
Or I get the couples that say, I am awkward in front of the camera, and then
they look perfect, and you're like,
where?
Where?
Yeah. But it's important. I mean, a lot of people have not been in front of the camera since their senior photos, where they had their elbow on the block and their for the viewers or for the, people that are just listening on the podcast, they're not viewing, like, I have like my fist underneath my chin and I look like a dweeb.
The school pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to be vastly different than.
See, and again, it's one of those things where, like, if your photographer knows what they're, and your photographer, if your photographer and videographer know what they're doing, they're going to know how to pose you that looks seamless.
Yeah.
So, for example, we did this couple's engagement, handful of months back, probably about 4 months ago now. And we did their wedding also. And I remember in the engagement pictures, I told the bride, you want bigger movements. It may feel over dramatic. That is okay, because you're not going to be able to tell in the pictures. You want more movement? Give me movement and I'll show you movement. We showed her how to walk. We showed her how to move her arms. And when I tell you she brought that into the wedding day, I was so impressed with her. Loved this couple so much.
Yeah. I think some people just need a little bit of guidance and just shown what to do. I mean, I do, because when I get in front of a camera, I look like a weirdo. So I'm, you're not the only one. But it's so important to have somebody that knows, well, actually, move your arm this way, and yeah, that looks a little better. Or somebody that can spot those minor differences.
I agree.
And sometimes it's just getting shown the back of the camera during a photo shoot is all somebody needs to get that confidence.
And realize, wow, I look like that?
Yeah. And you'd be surprised, the groom is usually more nervous.
And more self-conscious.
Yes. Absolutely.
Almost every single time the groom has been more self-conscious than the bride.
Well, I think a lot of times girls are taking selfies or they're doing their makeup. They're like used to presenting themselves to the world. And grooms are used to being, behind the scenes and the background.
A little bit more on the back burner.
Yeah. But
that is right. But that's typically how it is.
Yeah. They're not they're not like front and center.
Right.
Yeah.
That's your bride.
Yeah. But it's really exciting to see them kind of come out of their shell. And I've seen guys get so excited and they're like, I could pick her up and throw her over my shoulder. And they like throw their arm up.
That's the best.
Yeah. So I think that working with a photographer that can kind of pull that out of you, not forcefully, but like where you're willing to show that side of your relationship, you know, who you guys are behind closed doors, you're going to see that in the photos and it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah. Again, it's just the vibes. Like, yes, the vibes are important, but making sure that you're working with somebody who knows what they're doing. Like, not saying that anybody low budget doesn't know what they're doing, but typically you're paying for the experience. You're paying for the years and time and dedication that we have put into this, into learning the best poses for every type, you know?
Yeah, no, it's so important to not just shop by budget, but by the experience. And you want somebody that, yeah. Yeah, and that pretty much covers everything there is to know about being comfortable in front of the camera, finding a photographer that you jive with.
And next week, we will be talking to Kaylee. She is a hair and makeup stylist based out of Central New York.
The Beauty Stop.
Yes, we love the Beauty Stop. We've worked with her a handful of times, and we're excited to have her on.
And we also have new episodes every Tuesday at 10 a.m. So make sure to stay tuned for those.
Like and subscribe.